Hey everybody, this is Perch. This is one of my takes that I didn't realize this was controversial, but apparently it is. A number of people have commented on this as being a bad take or a lousy take or a controversial take or it will never happen take. And I'm confused as to why, and so I'll lay it out. So the basic take is that U.S. Western comics, the industry, and my definition, because everybody has a bunch of different definitions for this, my definition are, the traditional comic publishers. If it was 1990, we'd be saying, or 90s, we'd say Valiant, we'd say Dark Horse, we'd say Marvel, we'd say DC, we'd say Image. Those companies. I'm not talking about Scholastic or YA or manga. I'm not talking about Webtoon. I'm talking about the traditional U.S. comic market. So my basic take is that the U.S. comic market will improve at some point. It will also, get worse at some point, and it will improve, and it will get worse, and it will do that forever. And I say that as to me that is the most lukewarm take possible. It's like saying, when you wake up, it may be sunny, it may rain. One of those will happen. I say this because we've got decades of history to go through. And, we've seen comics improve and get better and sell more, and we've seen them, fail. We've seen albums have a comeback, music albums. We've seen all kinds of things up and down. It's highly improbable that this is the end, that everything is about to die. It's to the point of not even being vaguely realistic. The people who are saying this are not looking back at any kind of history. And quite frankly, it's more of a wish statement than a prediction statement. I wish comics would die because I don't like them. That's different from saying, but it's actually going to happen. Okay, I get, every 4 months or so, people have to throw out the prediction that DC will die. And lately, I saw a headline on Bounding, one of these, it's, comic creator says DC is going to die someday. I'm like, well, okay, everybody's going to die someday. But the reality is the U.S. comic industry has better days ahead of it, and it will also have worse days ahead of it. And and frankly, the proof is, again, the history. It's hard to imagine it a little bit right now if you're really discouraged about U.S. comics, and I'm not faulting you if you are. It's hard to imagine, but comics have been in worse shape. The implosion in the 70s was bad. Certainly bad for DC. Wasn't great for Marvel either at the time, but DC gets all the attention because of what happened. Marvel did file for Chapter 11. There were big question marks with their acquisition of Heroes World and other things if they were going to recover. It was a legitimate, not sure this is going to pull it up. There's been bad eras. The era we're in now is again, this part is subjective, but the content is just not good in a lot of cases, and it's not good in a lot of cases because the companies, it feels like they're not trying, that they're just kind of moving the chairs around. That's how it feels like, particularly DC and Marvel. They're both waiting for kind of their corporate masters to kind of tell them the direction or settle on a direction. So we're kind of killing time right now. I reference this moment a lot in videos, and I think it probably only means something to me, but there was the period of time in the X-Men where, Jonathan Hickman was supposed to come in, and then there was a delay of like 9 months or so. And so they basically said, well, we want to continue to sell comics, and we're going to put on kind of a phony show to say this is a big deal. What we're doing right now is a big deal in the X-Men. In fact, we're going to go weekly for a while. And they had the X-Men as like Ed Brisson and Matt Rosenberg and Kelly Thompson. I thought there was another one in there. Maybe Zeb Wells was in there at that point. I'm not sure. Anyway, it was basically this stall for time while we wait for Hickman to come in. And there was a brief moment in there where there was still a chance Hickman might bail out. I thought I always thought this was true, and I had people from Marvel go, no, 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 it was just a delay. And then I had finally had some confirmation from a reasonably senior guy at Marvel, like, no, no, there were still some things being signed and worked out, and there was a chance it wasn't going to happen. And so, we wanted to put our best foot forward. Fine. But the entire time period felt like it was spinning wheels waiting for direction. And that's kind of where both companies feel in general now. You have so many 5-issue miniseries. You have storylines that kind of go nowhere in a lot of cases, that they're just kind of ambling along. You have what feels like a drive to get cheaper and cheaper artists. It feels like people are waiting. They're holding their breath. But regardless, I'm still going to stand by. This is not a hot take that comics will at some point get better. It's a boring take. I fully expect people to call me out in saying, no, that's a stupid nonsense take. But no, it's look, it's just history. It's hard to fight history. And then I think you throw in manga in there, and manga doing its thing. I'm going to read this mail real quick. No, we didn't lead up to just the mail, because this all linked together, but it says, are back issues key to competing with manga? Is the mail. So it says, hello, Perch. I know you love a good industry-to-industry comparison, so I'm going to ask you to remember, not long after DVDs became a thing, dollar stores, or over here, pound shops, started selling these crappy movies at low cost. Do you want to watch RoboCop 3, Lawnmower Man 2, Speed 2? You could get these for $1, and they were brand new. They weren't secondhand. They had been made specifically to sell cheap in the direct-to-consumer market, partly because it means you reach new income who weren't buying up the $15 new release DVDs. It also made the proposition of a new DVD player seem more attractive, which means more of a VHS collection gets phased out and you buy more DVDs. I've been looking at which is smart, by the way. That entire process and everything else is smart business. I've been looking at my comics want list, and includes things like Stormbreaker and Saga Ray Bill. It hasn't been reprinted since 2005, which is stupid. From what I hear, it's a fun story and follows a fairly popular hero who doesn't have that many solo series. This as well as series like Legends of the Dark Knight all seem perfect to reprint very cheap and get them into the mass market. Give a nice uniform trade dress to look good on the shelf, but charge $7.99 instead of $15.99. Because what you want to do is penetrate low-income, low-cash markets, which includes kids who would otherwise buy manga specifically because it's good value relative to page count. As an additional question, do you think creators would raise a stink if they saw one of their trades being reprinted at a low cost? Would they feel like they were being ripped off? Does the artiste in them prefer a premium niche book to a cheap mass market one, even if the latter nets more money? So I read that mail and related to kind of that opening comment for a couple reasons. The first is that one of the ways that I think that comics, when you do see this rebound, is that the companies are going to lean on back issues more, just like this. Comic shops did for a period of time during COVID. They leaned on back issues. It had a moment, and then it kind of stuttered out, mainly because supply was exhausted. Comics moved around. There's only so far you could go. People realized they didn't have as much disposable income as they thought they did. Lots of things like that. But it's the question mark, and one of the things that I think is delaying some of the true comeback of comic publishers. There's a number of reasons, but one of them is the lack of leveraging the back issue market. And it's this library is theirs. In very, very rare cases, you have some rights tied up with creators, but that's very, very rare. That's a tiny, tiny fraction of those comics. In general, you have a pretty green field of material that you can mine and throw out there. You've got lots, and it's up to yours to do what you want with it. The comedy or tragedy is the thing they should do is exactly what you're mentioning, and I want to point this out about manga. When you're buying one of those tankobon versions, which is the manga that we see here in the U.S., everybody's buying those. You are buying back issues. And it's weird to kind of think about it that way, but you are. You're not buying new comics. You're buying manga back issues. These have been out for a while. They were reprinted, they were translated, they were brought over here, but they are in effect back issues. It would be somewhat trivial for US comic companies to compete with that in the sense that they also have decades of untapped libraries, particularly for this market, this wider market, that they could throw into a Zine and print. They don't even have to be that careful about it. You can print it on cheaper quality paper. You can print it in black and white if you wanted to. You have the ability to do whatever you want. But you could take the first 12 issues of Fantastic Four, the originals, throw it into a little book, and toss it out into the market. It will get bought. The cost to print it is, for all intents and purposes, zero. It is getting hung up. There is a little bit of the, well, hang on, will this devalue the collector's market? Some of the retailers would definitely rail against it, and some of the people who are in these comic companies are just not wired to think that way. But it's free money. It's absolutely free money just sitting there. And it's one of those cases where you could print out one of those kind of tankobons of old back issues from Marvel and DC at a rate of kind of one a month. You could flood the market. We know that Marvel and DC love doing that, but it's there. You could put it in the dollar stores. You can put it in the Walmarts and the Targets. They would take that content. They need stuff to, they're giving it to manga. And in many cases, manga does have a problem in that its boom was somewhat made up of a ton of back issue material. They're not producing new material as mass market popular fast enough to meet the current demand. And what I mean by that, and this has been another take, and I get why this one's a little bit more of a hot take for people, is that a lot of what we've been reading in manga has been stuff over the last 15 years or so. That's what's being printed. They're certainly coming out with new manga, but not at the same rate to make up for 15 years of kind of gap. And so there is a problem coming where there's going to be, more demand than supply. If Marvel and DC are smart, Dark Horse, anyone, they would start to meet that demand. That would be just good business. It would be relatively cheap business. And the fun part for the big companies, not that it should be fun for them, is that it's almost all upside. They don't have to pay any of the creative teams. They don't really even have to pay somebody to assemble. I mean, putting the books in that format is pretty trivial to do. But they do have to get over themselves a little bit and accept that their comics are going to get sold in stores they may not want to go to or are icky. And it's funny to think about it that way, but believe it or not, that's one of the barriers. When you're talking to some editors at Marvel, I remember this conversation of like, why don't you sell in the in the Safeway or the Publix or some of these stores? And I got this reaction of like, yeah, our product's more premium than that. Oh, okay, but there's people with money at those places, and that's an absurd statement because once upon a time, when I was a kid, you'd go into a smelly gas station and there would be a cheap wire spinner rack with comics crammed into it, sitting next to candy and newspapers. I enjoyed it. It helped build the audience. Why are we getting particular about going into a grocery store? God help us if we say we're going to sell it in like a dollar store. Oh my God, the white trash store like the dollar store, you're going to sell comics there? Absurd. So, there's some stuff to get over. But my belief is that the U.S. comic market, it definitely, there will be happy days again. And probably the trigger to those happy days is new management. And new management coming in to say, you know what, we're going to maximize these books. We're going to get distribution fixed. We're going to get all these pieces in play. Not necessarily new management's going to come in and go, we're going to get rid of all the liberal stuff. We're going to get rid of all the woke, clean up all the woke. You are going to have to tell good stories. You are going to have to pay good, writers. You are going to have to get out of this feeling like companies are treading water. You are definitely going to have to lead and do something about those problems. No doubt about it. However, You're also going to need to fix where comics are sold. You're going to need to fix kind of your back catalog. And in this case, I know I mentioned it before recently in other videos, you have to copy what manga is doing in the sense of you maximize that back issue market. It's insane not to. It is free money. Anyway, somebody explained to me why it's a hot take. That things will get better and things will get worse. I I can only imagine it's from pretty dumb people, quite frankly, who are, for whatever reason, decide to base their entire life on the idea that, if DC will just go out of business, then they'll magically, their lives will be better. I don't know. Spoiler: you're going to wake up and it's going to feel the same as the day before, but with fewer comics. That's it. That's it. Unless you work at DC, unless you are being sued by DC, unless you're suing DC, unless you have some kind of material financial connection into these comic companies, unfortunately, the only thing you're going to miss is that there won't be comics out. If you don't like the comics, you're going to miss nothing. But if you're waiting for these comic companies to die because it will make you feel better, you're going to find out it's like junk food. You're going to get a couple happy hours on social media crowing about, you were right, and then the sun will rise, and then what you got. But I don't know. Thanks for listening.